Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new teacher training on enhancing planning and recall time strategies. My name is Julie Berg, and I am a lead teacher here in Jersey City, and I will be doing the recording of our topic today. Next week, we will all be meeting virtually live, and we will also have Brooke Noonan, who is another lead teacher in the department, talking with us and discussing planning and recall time strategies. So because you are new teachers, we provide training on all of the ideas and parts of the day for the high scope curriculum. And even though we are virtual this year, we are still going to be giving you a workshop on planning and recall. Right now, because we are virtual, there is no planning and recall or work time where the children get to go to the different areas of the classroom. Right now, they are just having message board, small group, large group, and read aloud time. However, we did want to give you this information so when we go back, hopefully sometime soon, you will have this information. And while we're home, you might be able to make some of the planning and recall props that you'll need when you get back to the classroom. So I'm going to get started, and we talk about high scope and the plan, do, review process. And basically what they call that is the planning. The do is at work time, where the children are at centers. And then the recall is when they are done working in the areas. And it's really the major component of the high scope routine. What they found was they were doing research to create this curriculum, and they found that children who have gone through a high scope curriculum at a young age, 3, 4, 5, and 6, do much better when they get in the higher grades because they've had this concept of planning something, carrying it out, like doing it, and then looking back, reflecting, and thinking about, talking about what they actually did. So it helps with their social life, their homework life, all different things like that when they get older in middle school, high school, and even later in life. So the concept of planning is that the teacher allows the child to choose what area he or she would like to go work in the classroom. And the idea is that the child is going to articulate their plan. So they're going to talk about what they'd like to do. And the hope is that we're building self-confidence in the child because they're talking in front of a small group of children. Hopefully, again, it leads to active learning and supports the development of increasing complex play, because you're not just saying to them, where do you want to go, but you're asking them what materials they want to use, what do they want to do while they're there, and they'll be able to give you much more language as the year goes on. You'll see, or you already have seen, have many children that come to us as English language learners. So they either come with no English language or very little. And also some children that just have no English at all. And also English-speaking children that don't have a very rich vocabulary. So by having this part of the day, it helps to have them develop their vocabulary and also their articulation of what they want to do. Now, why do we do recall time? Recall time is what's done after work time. And the reason that they do the recall is because we're reflecting on what they did, their interactions they've had with the materials they used, their classmates, and also the adults in the classroom. And overall, the developmentally appropriate practice of doing planning and recall time encourages children to use their rich vocabulary, which we're going to build with them as the year goes on. It encourages them to engage in purposeful play. So they're not just saying, oh, I would like to go work in the family area and play. They're saying what materials they would like to use, like I'm going to cook a spaghetti dinner, or I'm going to cook breakfast for Sammy and Jose, because Sammy and Jose are also going to the family area. So it gives them some intentionality. It's not like you just open up the areas and say to them, go play. They have a purpose and they have an intention. And that happens at planning time, and it also happens at recall time, because you as the teacher are remembering what they said they were going to do when they were planning, and then you ask them to recall, did they actually do what their plan was? Now, planning it's important to make planning time not very difficult for children, okay? The concept of choice is something that might be new to them. Many children are given directions. They're told what to do, when to do, how to do it, because they're only 3 or 4 years old. So this idea of getting to choose at planning time is sometimes new for many of our kids. So when you say, where do you want to go? Sometimes it's overwhelming. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how to decrease that anxiety or the feeling of it being overwhelming. One of the ways is that when you say, what materials do you want to use? They need to know what materials are available to them before they actually go into those areas. So that's what you do at the beginning of the school year. You show them during small group time materials that are in the house area, materials that are in the block area, materials that are in the toy area or the block area, so that when you ask the children what do they want to play with or work with, then they'll have an idea of what materials are in that area. Now, when the children are new to planning, they tend to do it really, really quickly. Like they say, I want to go to the block area. And they don't have a lot to say. And like I said, if they don't have language, they won't have anything to say. Sometimes the children are just pointing, and sometimes they don't say anything. And we, as their teachers, need to encourage them and give them the language to use. A lot of times they want to go to areas that they're comfortable with, that they're familiar with, and they make the same plan over and over and over. And a lot of teachers will say to me, but he only goes to the block area. I want him to try new things. And honestly, for a while, it's good for them to have the repetition and be familiar with the comfortable things for them. Okay, so if they keep going to the block area, it actually is okay. You might want to try to think of a way to encourage them to go to another area, but we really don't say, no, you can't go to that area. You've gone there all week. Because the reason they're going there is because they are comfortable and it does feel good to them. You as the teacher can go to that area and increase the complexity of their play, but I really discourage trying to have them not go to an area that they choose. Also, in the beginning of the year, planning time can happen while you're in the interest areas. So when you're planning, the groups are small. You have half the class and your teacher assistant has the other half of the class. So you could go into the block area and talk about the materials that are in the block area, and your teacher assistant could go into the house area and talk about the materials that are in that area. And then ask the children if anybody wants to work in those areas, so that the children become familiar with the names of the areas and also become familiar with the materials that are in the area. Okay. The other thing that you can do is you can bring some of the materials that are in the areas to where you're planning. So sometimes teachers plan at the tables and they'll bring one material from each of the areas. and they'll talk about the materials, how the material is used, what area the material is located in, and then ask the children, does anybody want to work with this material? And the child might say, yes, I do. So then we give them the words or the sentence of, I would like to work with the markers in the art area today. I'm going to draw a picture of a tree with beautiful colors of leaves. Now that's a really complex sentence, but that's what we're aiming for. There needs to be a balance between planning with hands-on concrete objects and also talking, because our children are very, very young, obviously, and they focus or are better off when things are concrete or right in their hands. They can see them. And when you are just asking them questions abstractly, it's hard for them to know what their correct answer is or what they should say. So what we're doing is, by giving them the objects and giving them the pictures of the areas, we're helping them see things and touch things that will help them come up with a plan. We need to take our cues from the children and plan with them in a way that's supportive of them and not make it burdensome. We don't want to have them say, oh, it's planning time. You want it to be fun, exciting for them. They look forward to it. And because it's a time where they need to describe what they want to do, how they want to do it, where, and hopefully with whom they do want to work. Because children feel more confident about making decisions and have more experience in using materials, they're now able to elaborate their plans as the year goes on. And that's our goal. It might start out short and sweet, where they might just say block area, or they might just point to the block area. But as the year goes on, we want them to have hopefully more concrete plans, more vocabulary in their plans, and be able to speak more about what they actually want to do. Okay, so this is a quote, and it says, on one hand, we often get carried away with making a train or playing with materials, that we lose sight of planning conversations. On the other hand, planning conversations that occur in the absence of materials and knowledge of what is available makes little sense. So this is a really good quote sentence about planning, because we don't want the kids to just plan and say what they want to do. We want to let them use the materials, play with the materials. And we don't want to just give them the materials and say, go ahead, do what you want. So you want them to have, like I said before, intentional planning, where they think about the materials, they talk about what they're going to do with those materials, and then that really makes things much more concrete for the children, and it makes much, much more sense. Okay, so we're going to move on now from planning to recall. So recall obviously is done after work time. And again, it is done in two groups, preferably the same two groups that you did your planning with. Okay, so you keep your planning group and your teacher assistant keeps a planning group. And then the recall group is the same recall group for both you and your teacher assistant. So here it says, for young children, the recall process involves much more than straightforward retrieval of facts and figures. During recall, children engage in an active story forming process. They're literally constructing their memory. Okay, so if you think about it, they have to remember what they did and then talk about it. So it's kind of like telling a story. So, you know, you come home from work and you say to your husband, oh, let me tell you about my day. Your husband's like, oh my gosh, here we go with this long story. Well, that's what we kind of want our kids to do. We want them to recall and think about what they did at work time, and then be able to verbalize it and actually tell it from a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that is actually helps them with comprehension, literacy, reading, all different things that we as 3 and 4-year-old teachers are building and setting the foundation for. Lots of people say all we're doing is playing with our kids, but we are actually giving them the foundation for reading and comprehension, literacy, all of those things that they're going to need later on in their academic life. When children recall their work time experiences, they form mental versions of their experiences based on their ability to understand and interpret what they have done. So sometimes children are able to do that and are able to say, I went here, I went to the block area, I built a train track, I played with the trains, I played with Jose, and then we cleaned up, and then I went to the book area and I read the book with Miss Julie, the one about the train, the little engine that could, and then I went to the art area and I drew a picture. Now that is a lot. That's a lot of recall. It's a lot of mental visions because they need to be looking at what they did, recalling what they did. And that is what we look for at the end of the school year. But what we need to do is we need to scaffold the children to get them there. So as the teacher and the adult, because we have had them at planning time, we know that he wanted to go work in the block area with Jose. And we also know that we read the book, The Little Engine That Could. So the little boy that we're planning with, let's say his name is Sammy. Sammy is having a really hard time at recall. But you, as the teacher, could say, oh, I remember at planning time, you said you were going to go to the block area, right? Do you remember that? And hopefully he can say yes or shake his head. And then you're going to scaffold and help him with the language he might want to use, the materials he used, and then helping him tell his story of his recall experience. As children reflect on what they've done, their experiences and ideas, they begin to think about what they've done in an abstract way. So it's hard for them to think abstractly. So we as the adults have to help them with that abstract thinking. And if they're not there yet, what we want to do is we want to support them wherever they are developmentally. So if they need the concrete props, we bring them the props. If they need the piece of paper that they recalled on, anything that helps them to think and have that idea of what they did and that abstract thinking. By thinking these things through, children begin to understand, that they can make things happen. They learn new things and they also solve their own problems. So they're not just saying to you, I went here and this is what I did. They're talking about, wow, I learned how to build the tower higher than I did yesterday. They talk about how they figured things out and maybe how they had to go to the water table and how to get the water through the hose. So they talk about all of those things that they are learning while they're at work time, and talking it through also is teaching them. Recall also is a time for socialization, just like planning time. The children are talking in front of a group, in front of their peers, and about something that they've done personally. So again, this is something that helps prepare our young children for more academic things. They're going to be asked to talk in front of groups. They're going to be asked to talk about things that they've done. So this is just the very, very, very beginning of those concepts. Now, this is the quote for recall. Remembering and reflecting on their intentions, associating plans with actions and the outcomes, and talking with others about meaningful experiences are important to the intellectual and social emotional development of all children. These mental and social processes are skills that will benefit children throughout their lifetime. Okay, so like I said, when they have to get up and speak in front of a group, when they have to talk in front of their class, all of these things are things that we, as the 3 and 4-year-old teachers, are preparing them to do. So when ever somebody asks you, well, why do you do planning? Why do you do recall? Give them these quotes and explain it to them. Okay. Now, social emotional is something that we talk a lot about, especially now because of the virtual learning and everyone being home. There is a section in the preschool standards that's based on social and emotional, and these are the standards. So when you are doing planning and recall, these are some of the standards that you can use in your planning sheet. One is to express individuality by making independent decisions about which materials to use. So that would be one of your objectives or your SWOTs. Discuss their own actions and efforts. Make independent choices and plans from a broad range of diverse interest areas. Totally what we're doing. And then attend to tasks for a period of time. And you'll see some children you have, they might stay in that area for the whole hour. You're like, oh my goodness, how can they stay there that whole time? You might have children that go from here, this area to this area, they just pop all over the classroom. And then as the year goes on, you'll see the child that stayed for the whole hour might now have many different interests and go different places. The child that was doing all that hopping, he might now, or she might have a longer attention span and do much more complex play. So these are the standards that you would put in your planning sheet for planning and recall time. Now, these are going to be a whole bunch of different slides that I'm going to go through with you that will talk about and show you how to use planning props. This poster was something that probably I got trained in 10 years ago. So this is something that was new to me then, not new now, but it was really showing the development of young children. And it talks about how we start out by really understanding concrete objects. Then the next stage of development would be looking at photographs of real things, real people or real objects. Then the next step would be understanding pictures or symbols. So for example, this is the writing area sign or symbol for the writing area. And then the next step of development would be understanding a line drawing. So this line drawing is of the table toy area. And then the last developmental stage is actually writing. So you would say reading, today I work in, and then you would write the area that the child would write, the area that he or she worked in today. So these are the stages of development and how a child can understand different concepts, not just your areas, but things in general. They need the object first, then the photo, then the symbol, then the drawing, and then the writing. So when you're working with young children, remember, they don't always understand what you drew. They might need a real photograph of it. So it depends what developmental level they're at. And we want to reach all the developmental levels of all of the children in our class. And that's what we're going to show you on the next few slides. These are some samples, like I said, of planning and recall props. And all planning and recall time should always have props. Okay, that's why I said you could make them now while we're home. So these would be the example of using only concrete objects. So you would go around to your areas and you would take one thing from each area. So this would be something from your table toy area. These are counting of strawberries. This would be your writing area with markers. This would be your block area with these block houses. This would be your house area that you're going to make some pizza. This would be your listening area, the library area, the music area, the discovery area, and then these over here would be your art area. Okay, so that would be just where you're using the concrete objects. So you would have the children sit around the table and say, what material would you like to work with? And then discuss what area that material came from. Okay, then we would move on. And then we would use actual photos of the areas that are in your classroom. So these are photos of a classroom. So what you want to do is you want to take the pictures or the photographs of your actual classroom, so that when they look and say, oh, here's the house area, that's their house area from their classroom. That's their music area. So that you would make this poster, and you would make hopefully 2 of them, one for you and one for your teacher assistant. Then this is an example of pictures that somebody cut out of a magazine. To me, this is a little busy of the pictures, but it is a way that somebody did their classroom. I would suggest that you only use one picture for that area, not multiple. Then this is an example of how you could scaffold when you are doing planning or recall time. If you have children that still need the real object, they're not ready to just look at that picture and know what area it is. They need the real object. Well, you could bring the real object and put it next to the photo. So for your music, you have those shakers, the table toy area, you have the strawberry counters. Discovery, you have the magnifying glass. The art, you have glue. The book, you have a book. And then writing, you have pencil and marker. So this would be an example of scaffolding, which means that you're meeting the needs of all of the children in your class. You might have children that still need concrete objects, and children that really just need the photograph. Then this one is another example of scaffolding, where you have children that are still using the photograph, but now what you've done is you've introduced them to their name and their letter link. So I hope all of you know about their letter links already. That was hopefully in another training. But what you can do is when you are planning, the children get, you have just your group's letter links. And these are just small. You can get this off the HighScope website. I can explain that to you when we're live, but they give you a piece of paper, like you click on small, medium, or large, and you can print these out. So you would have a set, and your teacher assistant would have a set. And you would say to let's see, Lori, oops, sorry, I clicked on it. Lori, what area would you want to go to today? And she would take her letter link and put it on the toy area and then talk about what she wanted to do. Now, what you can do is, for the kids or the students who are recognizing their name or recognizing their letter link, you can hold it up, they could read it, and then have them put it there. So this is really just a major scaffolding for children that are learning letters, names, looking at pictures of their letter links, and then also the photographs. So you have lots of developmental levels with this planning and recall sheet and process. Now this one is the symbol. So this is a great way of creating a planning sheet also. And see how the lines are drawn? Remember that one that I said was very, very busy? Well, this is where you draw the line so it's not so busy. So this is, I think it's the 3rd step down, where it's the abstract symbol of the area. So we will be sending you the area signs so that you can create one of these. This is actually just a poster board, and it has you just cut the area sign out, and then the children can point to it. They can put things on it, which I'm going to show you. And then these are blank just in case you have other areas in the classroom. Okay, now, believe it or not, these drawings are more abstract than these symbols. The symbols are things that they look at and they can memorize and say, okay, this symbol here means music. But then you come over here, of course I don't have music. Let's go back. All right, here's your house. Here is the house that I drew, or the blocks that I drew, or the book. Some children might look at this and be like, what in the, or well, let's say this one, what in the world is that? That does not look like a block. So if your child is not at this stage yet, then you really do have to go back to the symbols, because drawing is much more abstract. So this right here, down here on this ring, are materials that are in the art area. So you might have a child that's in your class that always wants to go to the art area. When you ask them, what do you want to do, or what do you want to use, they don't really have an answer. They look at you blankly. So instead of just saying, do you want to, draw something, paint something, this ring has pictures of all of the materials that you have in the art area. So your student could then flip through the ring and then point or say, oh yeah, this is what I want to use. So it helps them, if they don't have the language, it helps them recall what materials are there. And it gives them suggestions, because if they're just looking at you blankly and they're like, I don't really know what I want to do, I just know I want to go there, this helps focus them and give them an intentional materials to play with. Let me just go back to that. We, in the Google Drive that you're going to be we're sharing with you, you will be given this. One of Brooke's teachers did an amazing job, and she did materials for each of the areas. So that will be something that Brooke will send to you, and you can print it out and then make a ring for each of the different areas. Okay, now this planning board looks a little busy, but this one has the symbols of the areas, or the area signs. And then this is allowing the child to use whatever he or she wants to. They can use a photograph of themselves, they can use their name and their letter link, or Smarty over here, Alex is writing his name. So this one is showing all of the different developmental levels of the children in the class. Let's say that this is Sammy. And if you hold up Sammy's letter link, he does not know it's his yet. But if you hold up his photograph, he knows that that's he. So he would use just the photo. But Makai, if you hold up his letter link, oh no, that's Michaela. Michaela, if you hold up Michaela's letter link, she's going to recognize that. So you wouldn't be giving her the picture of herself, you would actually be giving her her letter link. And like I said before, Alex already knows how to write his name, so he's just going to take a pen and write it under the area that he would like to go to. Okay, now this board is just showing how all of your children now know their letter links and know the areas of the classroom through their symbols. So they're going to put just their symbols there. And this is creating a graph. And we're going to talk about planning and using some math materials and teaching math while doing planning time. So here you have it's set up as a graph. It's not set up where you just have the areas randomly, but you have them on the top where the children can count how many children are going to be in the block area, in the book area, in the house area. And that might be part of your planning where you say, okay, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 people in the block, and you write the number 3 here. This board is actually laminated, so it can be written on with a dry erase and then wiped off. So you always, 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 I'm sure you know by now, want to laminate everything that you have. If you can laminate the letter links also, that's great because they'll last you much, much longer. And here we go with the math concepts. So this is the board that I showed you before. And this is, remember I said we'll talk about putting objects here. So there's a few ways that you can do this. One is you give each child a tiny bag of pennies. And as you'll see, we don't have more than 5. So you don't need to give them more than 5. They each get 5 in a little bag. And you say to them, which of these areas would you like to work in? So if they say toy area, you're going to say, okay, let's count how many pennies do you need to go to the toy area? So you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they take out their pennies and they count and they put them right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the types of planning activities that you do much later on in the school year, where your children have already learned the names of the areas, have already learned the materials in the classroom, and are speaking in complete sentences, are using rich vocabulary. Because remember I said you don't want your planning time to be boring. I think I used a different word that I couldn't say, but we don't want it to be boring for the kids. So what we do is, as the year goes on and you are hopefully increasing their knowledge, you can add things like math to planning time. So this isn't something that you start out with. And if you're teaching a 3-year-old class, you might not even get to this by the end of the year. But 4-year-old classrooms, not all, but most of our 4-year-olds are coming from the 3-year-old program. So when they get to you, they don't really need the concrete objects and they don't really need the photographs. They've already know the areas of the classroom. So you take the planning time and move to different concepts like math and language arts. I hit that by accident, but we're going to move on. So this is another example of math. So here you have the pennies, and then you have the numbers, you have the dots, and you have the words. So this again is showing different ways to scaffold with the children based on numbers. So when you have the penny, that's the actual concrete item, right? Then you have the dot, which is the symbol. Then we have the number, which is a symbol also, but that symbol is a little bit much more complicated than the dot. And then after that, you have the word. So while you're planning, you can have just the pennies, and that's the first step. And then you can move to cards that just have dots, or cards that have dots with the actual number. And then you can move to cards that have the number and the word. And I don't have any of those here. But you would put 4 and then write the number 4 under here. And then you move, obviously, the last one would be just the word. Okay, so those are all different ways that you can use math while you're planning. Now, children should have many opportunities to be successful in conveying their plans. This is more likely to happen if we support them in a variety of ways. And we're going to show you some different ways to support children's fine motor skills and now their writing. And so, like I said, we're going to do math, and now we're going to do language arts, writing, and fine motor. This is the big one. So this is what we are all aiming for, right? All the parents, oh, my child can write his name. My child can write her name. My child knows their letters. So this is a planning sheet where the child is going to say, write where they're going to work. So it says, today I will work in, and they write the area here. And if they're going to work in the block area first and then the book area, they would write block here and then book. Okay? Now, here, is an example of where William really doesn't have the ability to write yet. So we don't want William to feel left out and as if he is less than. So we're going to scaffold him. And he's going to use his symbol to represent his name. And he's going to use a picture or the symbol of the writing area to show where he wants to work. Now here's Smarty Pants Alex again. Alex writes his name and then he writes the area. So both children come out of this planning time successful, and we're not getting Alec or William upset because he's not able to write yet. We're giving him materials that he can still be successful during planning time. This is a planning sheet. It's just a piece of paper, 8 by 11, that you will get. And again, it has the areas, the symbols of the areas. So this is after you use the big planning boards with the photographs and all of those things, you can now give each child their own separate piece of paper. And each child can plan differently. They can write their name if they're able to. They can write their date if they're able to. If they can't, you just leave that part right out. And then they can circle the area that they want to go to. And it's a great way, again, of doing shapes. Circle the area you want to go to. Put an X through the area you want to go to. Put a square around the area you want to go to. You could talk about colors. Circle something blue that you want to do first and something red that you want to do second. So that's teaching color concepts and also teaching first, second, third, fourth. Okay, so there's all different things you can do with this planning sheet to develop concepts with the children. Okay, this is another one, a little more complex. So here it has where the child can write his or her name. They circle the area that they want to go to, and then look, they actually get to write it. I want to work in the house. So here we have the words. So your students might not be able to know how to spell it, but they can copy it. And they could just write house. They could write house area. So you're providing them with the materials that they need to be able to now go further and actually write the letters. You can also always provide on the table or wherever you're doing planning and recall their letter links. So if they don't know how to write their name yet, they can copy the letters or they can look at their letter link. Okay, now this is an example of one way to do planning or recall, and it's through journaling. It was, I have to say, I'm very, very biased, my favorite way to do recall. And here you'll see the children have their journals, and here are the areas on a ring. So if they want to draw, this can help them draw the symbol. Notice here he wrote, I think it says block area. So he saw the words and was able to copy the words. And then here you have an example of the child with the cards on the ring. So awesome way to do planning and recall. And these are great. So here it has house, House, area. And then this is block area. I love these. Now, one of our core items is using maps. So when you look at the core and you think, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to do mapping with 3- and 4-year-olds? You can do it during planning and recall. You can create a map of your classroom, and this is an example, and they can plan through the map or with the map. So they can drive, they can talk about directions. Oh, I have to go up to the music area, or I have to go left to the house area, or down to the art area. You're talking about positional words, left and right, up and down. And then this is another map. This again, some people do wonderful things, but some people, when they do it, it makes it just too busy for my eyes. Like the rug. This is the rug in the book area. But whatever you feel comfortable with and your children feel comfortable, with is fine. So this is another example of a classroom map. And this is for geography. The item in core is GG, and it's that the child is able to read simple, familiar maps, such as a map of the classroom. So if you're doing this during planning and recall time, you're going to get a level 4 under GG, which is in the social studies part of the core. Now, here are some additional planning and recall supports, like props. One of the teachers that I think Brooke had used this photo album for each area of the classroom. So there was one of the music area, and if you open it up, it had pictures of all of the materials. And these were actual real pictures, photographs, not the one that we're going to be sending you in the drive. These were actual photographs. So the child could take the music photo book and then look through it and say, oh yes, I want to use the tambourine, or I want to use this. And then you give the child the word tambourine in case they don't know it. And that's a great way of building their vocabulary. This is areas that are on a ring. If you look right up here, here's the ring. So it looks bigger than it actually is. But again, these are the materials that are in that area. So this is good for the beginning of the school year where the children aren't familiar with what materials are in the classroom. And again, just another example of materials that are in the areas. Same thing. So the book area, it has puppets, it has books, the felt board, the songbook. And then this is, you see, this is like a paper protector, and they had one page had the house area, one page had the table toy area, so they flipped it like a book almost. That's my dog, if you can hear her breathing. This is a great one. This is for children that need to get up and move. Because like I said, most of the examples I'm telling you about are sitting at a table where they're planning at a table. Well, you might have some very active young children, and they might be bored with sitting at that table. So this is a planning and recall hopscotch mat. And what it is, if you go to like Walmart or the dollar store, it's, liner for cabinets. And it's just a roll of liner, and you just break it down into the areas. And this was drawn, believe it or not. Somebody drew this, and I don't know who drew this one. And these are the symbols of the areas, and they can hop to the area they want to go to. They can skip. They can jump, whatever way they want to move to the area that they choose to go to that day. This is a planning cube. This I like. The only thing I don't like about this planning cube is sometimes it doesn't fit all of the areas of the classroom. So if you are using a planning cube, you might need to use 2 planning cubes. And these are photographs, again, of each of the areas. So you can use photographs, or you can use the area signs. And then these are props that I would have brought if we were live. This is a planning and recall book. This is also a book. This you will be getting. So this is something like that sheet I showed you. These are examples of the what I just showed you, the cube. This also, people love making this. This is the circle, and you can put like a spinner here, and the child can like spin it and say if it lands on, what's this? This is block area. Then the child could say, oh, who would like to go to the block area? And then any child that's in their group that would like to go to the block area could go there. So it's kind of like playing a game a little bit with the spinner. And there's different versions that you can do with the spinner. But when we're live, Brooke will tell you, when we're live, a lot of people like to make the circle. And this is very easy because, again, you're going to be given the area sign. So these are things that you'll be able to make while you're home and get prepared to go back and do planning and recall. This is one of Brooke's teachers did a planning and recall with a buddy. And this is really awesome. This is really good for 4-year-olds where they are talking to each other. So here we have, I can't read them. Okay. Oh, I just put my glasses on. That helped. We have Jose and Annalie. Let's just hope that's her name. Jose and Annalie are going to be paired up to be planning and recall buddies. So this would be something that you do later in the year. And what they do is they tell each other where they want to work. And then for recall, where they go back and they're paired up again and they say what they did and where they went. So it's a great way to help foster children to work together. It helps with children who are learning English. You pair them up with somebody who is a native English speaker. It's fantastic also later in the year when you they are done with you. They don't need you anymore. They just need each other. They know how to do planning and recall. So this is a great way to introduce it. And this you can change, as you can see down here, this is a Velcro dot. So you can change who the partners are going to be, or you can allow them to choose who they want to be with. Okay? Now, while we're doing planning and recall, we're going to also talk about how to assess planning and recall time through the PQA. So if you haven't been told about the PQA yet, I don't want to be the first one to tell you, but what it is it's not an evaluation, it's an assessment tool that we lead teachers use to come into your classroom and look at the high scope program. So this is the sheet for, let's see, planning time. So this is a copy of the book. Oops, I went. And this talks about, these are the scores. You either get a score of a 1, a 3, or a 5. You can actually get a 2 and a 4 if you're in between. But the 5 is, there's a daily time set aside for children to make plans. So this hopefully you will get, because you all are going to do planning and recall. Then this one says, adults use a range of strategies to support children's planning. So you use props, you use area signs, you might use a tape recorder, you might plan individually or in pairs, which we just talked about. So if you're doing 1 or 2 of these things, you're going to get this score. This one says if you always do the same thing, you would get this score. So you want to do a variety and change it up. This one says that adults encourage children to plan in ways that are consistent with their developmental levels. And that's what I've been talking about all morning, scaffolding. So the children who need the objects, there's objects available. Children who need the photographs, there are photographs available. Children who need the symbol, there's symbols. So you don't want to just have one thing, okay? You don't want to just say, okay, we're all using this planning sheet. You might put out the planning sheet, but each child might use the planning sheet in a different way. Some children might write the word out. Some children might draw. Some children might circle. So that is where you're looking for the scaffolding, that you're working on different developmental levels with the child. And then the last one is that all areas and materials are available for children to make their plans. So you never close an area or say, no, you can't go to that area. Let's say there's a flood or something that you can't control, then okay, but you want to always have all of the areas open for the children. Now the next slide is recall time, and it's pretty much the same. This just says that you always have recall time during the day, and it should be right after work time. That's our goal. That's what we want. We want recall time to be right after work time. And then this is the same as the other sheet, saying that you encourage different ways of recall. You don't just do it the same way where you say, where did you go and what did you do? You give them other materials to use. You give them writing props, area signs, hula hoops, tape recorders. They do it in pairs or small groups. And then this one says that teacher or the adult encourages children to recall in developmental levels. So this is the scaffolding. So when they're really young, they're pointing or saying one word or two words. And then as they grow up and mature, because of all of your teaching, they will be saying complete sentences, drawing, and maybe even writing the words. Okay, so those are the things that you want to strive for when you are doing planning and recall. That's pretty much it. I hope that the webinar was informative to you, and we look forward to seeing you next week. I'm pretty sure it's next week, and we will discuss everything that you've seen here in the recording. And I know you're looking forward to meeting Brooke and talking to her in person, and she will be sending out through the Google Drive all of the information that I showed you, and all of the things that you can use to make the planning and recall props. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.